So lately, I've been thinking, while I've been away for 2 years, I've been thinking about something, about a very particular thing. That thing is Isekai. Maybe to nobody's surprise, I've kind of been thinking about Isekai a little bit while I've been gone, alright? A little bit. And the reason for that is because I've seen this post go about, and I don't think it's necessarily like a meme. It's just kind of like this fun format people take sometimes. It's basically somebody will post, somebody should make an Isekai about blank. And that blank usually has a kind of funny but equally interesting idea inserted in there. Like, somebody should make an isekai about being reincarnated in a fursuit that you can't take off. Now, that's funny, but that's actually a series. It's called Kumakun Bear. I think she can take it off. She just doesn't because she has social anxiety or something. I've seen this post go around, and it's pretty interesting to me personally because I feel like it gets so very close to, in my opinion, the true essence of isekai while still missing the point to a certain degree. It's kind of making fun of what the idea of isekai is while being what isekai is. Because in my opinion, isekai is literally just that prompt and nothing else. Right? You might think of all the generic stuff, the magic schools, the being reincarnated as a baby, the being turning into a demigod by the second chapter type of stuff. And sure, that's the derivative stuff. That's the stuff that floats to the top. But when you condense it down, when you heat it up and vaporize it and the residue at the very bottom, I feel like this is what that is. The prompt, somebody should make an isekai about blank. I feel like that is what it is. Because isekai is nothing more than a tag, really. Isekai kind of got its start for the most part. There was some stuff before it, but it kind of got its start in the web novel space, right? In places like Shotsetsu Kaninaro. And the way those places work is that they're algorithms. They're basically YouTube, but for web novels. It's a robust algorithm. You put certain tags, and then you write a story. If the story is good enough, and the tags are good enough, you get voted up, and eventually you make it to the front page or something like that. If you're getting a lot of views, somebody will approach you with a publishing deal. They'll be like, hey, go clean this stuff up. We're going to sell it as a volumes and we're gonna make a lot more money. We're gonna attach an artist to it, blah 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 blah. That's in essence, I'm being very reductive here. There's a lot of other details. The algorithm obviously doesn't work like YouTube does, but it's very similar in its essence to how YouTube works, right? So as a whole, really, and a lot of you will know this if you have read the sloppiest of the slops, as a whole, isekai is kind of not very definable except for the fact that the character has to either be reincarnated or transported to this other world. That's kind of all you need. And look, don't get me wrong, I get why people would look at that, at what I just said, and say, so what? The stuff that still gets put in front of me is still pretty bad. And you're right, like the reason I have some degree of sentimental attachment to isekai is because I am the slop eater. You know, the person you complain about when, you know, the Mushoku Tensei gets a full adaptation while other more high prestige manga get left in the dust by different studios and stuff. I'm the guy that eats that stuff up. I'm the slop eater. I am the slop eater. So hate me if you want to hate me. But I do think isekai does have a lot of value. I get it though. I do. It's kind of the harem rom-com of the 2020s. It's a lot of generic stuff. Magic schools, becoming a demigod by the second episode, harem of girls, blah, blah, blah. We've seen this over and over again. First it was magic schools and now it's isekai. I know. Trust me. I know. Okay? I watched the old anime. I know. I'm gonna put like 3 high prestige anime I watched on the screen. I gotta flash my anime card real quick so people don't think I'm just defending isekai for no real reason. Alright? There we go. But now it's time to defend isekai for no real reason. No, but really, like, here's the thing. Even if you don't like isekai, none of it, not even the idea of it, right? Even though the idea is fairly broad and I feel like anybody could potentially find an isekai out there they like, I get it. You don't like just the idea of stuff being an isekai. I still think it has value, right? Just from a purely holistic logistical standpoint, I think isekai has value. And I think the best way to showcase that isekai has value is to compare it and contrast it maybe to something that is equally prevalent and equally dominant in the Western world. Creepypastas. I mean, really think about it. Creepypastas get written by amateur writers that have aspirations. The tag creepypasta can imply anything, right? There's creepypastas out there about going to another dimension. There's the classic ghost stuff. There's demons. There's a giant pig you gotta crawl into. Like, there's a wide variety of different creepypastas. But yeah, creepypastas are written by amateur writers. They get posted to a place like Reddit. The No Sleep subreddit specifically, I think, is fairly prevalent and fairly famous for having a lot of incredible creepypastas in there. If they get a lot of attention, they float up to the top. The amateur writer gets a following, and that in turn gives that amateur writer more clout, which then helps them leverage a book deal with a big publisher. I don't necessarily know if a lot of creepypastas get movies, but there are some out there, of course, like the Slender Man movie, even though that one's not necessarily that good, but it is a movie adaptation, right? That's a creepypasta that got a Hollywood adaptation, so there have been some that have made it up there for sure. But yeah, creepypastas as a whole work in a very similar way as Isekai. The only real premise you need is for it to be posted, and we're being really traditional, as the actual poster of the story, right? Like, my wife has been very weird lately. She's been smiling at me around corners, right? And you post that, and then that's just a story. It's a separate story, but you're posting it as a poster. That's the whole premise of a creepypasta, is that this online thing about creepy accounts from different people. So it's kayfabe. It's kayfabe in the creepypasta world. Some of them completely drop that disguise, but at that point, you are just writing a short story. For it to be a creepypasta, you really need to adhere to this rule that you have to some degree, pretend it is you posting this, and this is a real event that happened. So there you have a certain degree of restriction. Creepypasta, you have to pretend that it's real. Isekai, you have to have the person be transported one way or another to a completely different world. That's the first one. Second comparison, you post it to a website where you hope it gains traction. How does it gain traction? For one, the Isekai tag and a really catchy long title. I was reincarnated into the normal world, but I'm unable to take off my fursuit. That's one, right? Or my wife keeps peeking at me from around corners. That's two. There you go. That's the second comparison. Third comparison. What do you need in order to become successful in these websites? Well, you need to amass a following, and you need to have people keep up with every chapter you post. Isekai and creepypastas, Shotes Caninado, and usually Reddit. There you go. So, there you have it. Isekai is the creepypastas of Japan. And look, if you're knowledgeable enough about the anime fandom, then you know there was already a system in place for independent creators. Kamike, right? Or Kamiket. The doujin is the OG indie medium in the anime sphere. Hardcore otakus drawing, writing, or programming the very best they have to offer, all to sell it to other equally hardcore people at the biggest convention in Japan. A lot of big anime now have doujin DNA running through their blood, like Fate and Toho being the two that have morphed into colossal cultural pillars in the fandom. So yeah, the concept of having a platform where independent creators can make it big isn't necessarily a new concept. Big surprise. But I do think there is a kind of crucial difference, and that is that the talents required to succeed in the Kamikate circuit are more varied than the ones required to just post words on a webpage, right? Like having to have some art skills, or even getting someone that has those skills to work with you, is already a huge hurdle for most introverted, hyper nerdy otakus. Not to mention having enough motivation to make the journey out to the seasonal Kamikate and duel it out with the competition there, and on top of that, hoping to God that whoever buys your doujin will also follow you on social so that you can grow your audience. When you compare this to just posting a chapter, and that chapter hopefully getting picked up by a robust algorithm, getting taken all the way to the top, and all of the things I just mentioned happening naturally to you from the comfort of your own home, there's kind of no competition there. For better or for worse, web novels are kind of the easiest, most accessible medium out in the anime's fandom right now, right? Like, all you need is an idea. You don't even really need to write that well, to be honest. If your ideas are good enough and you get big enough, you will eventually get an editor that can help you along, help you polish things for like the final volume version of whatever it is you're writing. This low barrier of entry very quickly created a unique ecosystem. For guys, no-skill badasses that train One Punch Man style, or godlike MCs that collect anime girls like trophies were easy dunks, and for girls, a peaceful retirement-like life with a hot night or a royal court drama filled with intrigue was an easy score. So kind of just the aforementioned stuff I've been talking about, right? The derivative stuff floating to the top. This is the derivative stuff. On top of adding the Isekai tag, if you add any of these different elements, you're even more likely to get boosted by the algorithm, get picked up, which is why you see a lot of this make it to anime and why it all feels so samey. It's all oh so cliched. And you might want me to denounce it. You might want me to say, so that's why we should push for more unique isekai to get out there. But I'll be honest, I love that shit. I love it. For me, it's like Lego pieces. It's just so easily accessible, so simple to click these tropes together and fill out the spaces in between with whatever your heart desires. You want a harem? Okay. Oh, you want everybody in the harem to marry the main character? Sure, that's incredibly indulgent, and people are gonna look at you sideways, but I'll give it to you. Why not? What about you, lady over there? Being reincarnated as a princess? Sure thing. A succession war you escaped due to your extensive knowledge of chemical reactions? Okay, well, we'll give the prince against carbon monoxide poisoning, I guess. Do you want to be born or transported? Do you want to keep modern day items or only work with the materials in the other world? Do you want political intrigue or action, military strategy or biblical imagery, futuristic world or medieval, ultimate enemy to be God, or actually, you scratch the last one. No, that one doesn't work. I feel like everybody ends up fighting God in any amount of anime. Any anime that goes long enough, you end up fighting God, I feel like, right? But you get what I mean. I'm not even saying, oh, all you need for an isekai is to get sent to another world and that's why it's cool. No. Even taking the tropes from every isekai you know can be fun. As cliched as this ecosystem may seem, I think it is one of the best because it's easily accessible and also has these big wide gaps in between popular tropes that can be filled with a lot of creative ideas. All these popular things I just mentioned, right? All this genre defining things that you think about when you think about the generic isekai can still lead to very interesting developments. I've lately been reading, and I'm gonna make a video about this, but let me just briefly mention it. I've been reading Death March to the Parallel World Rhapsody. It's a series that is fairly generic in its anime form, so I picked up the light novel. I kind of happened to like the cutesy art style. It was interesting because it is generic in the story beats it follows, but the way the power system is structured, it's basically kind of like an admin that logs into a game pretending to be a player. And that's a very interesting type of dynamic to have, right? Like, but that is what it is, and you wouldn't know from seeing this cover right here. This very generic cover. You wouldn't know that. You know, the guy's a game developer, so you can't get more on the nose than that. I'm like, I think this is supposed to be like, this is an admin that is playing amongst players, but is trying to keep it low key, but he has all the cheat codes, right? Like, he literally has admin commands. But anyways, I'm kind of getting sidetracked. But I do want you to do an exercise. Go to a random word generator and roll until you find a word you like. Then start to think how you would turn that word into an isekai. In my case, I got whip. So then I thought of an isekai where all I'm allowed to equip are whips. I can have a skill branch, and I'm probably going to go to the realistic route and make it really hard for our MC to use the whip at first. Maybe have him discover he can channel mana to control the whip during the climax of Volume 1 or something. It's not the best idea, and it is fairly generic still, but I came up with it in under a minute, and I could probably rate a solid couple pages just off of that prompt alone, right? So for somebody like me who is still kind of an aspiring amateur writer, having something like isekai that is popular and at the same time kind of fun to write around these blockades that are the cliches, I don't know. I personally find a lot of joy in that, and I find it very endearing. And I think that's what isekai has to offer, just fun. There are plenty of things you could pick apart, plenty of issues on plenty of series. But at the end of the day, whether it's reading or writing it, it is fun and easy. That low barrier of entry, the fact that literally anyone can start typing away, filling pages with cliches and tropes and incredibly long names and self-inserts and indulging in unrealistic romances and friendships and somehow get big enough to be published as an actual light novel and maybe even get a manga and anime, that's pretty awesome. It's a weird sort of reverse curse. People clown on isekai so much that the bar has been lowered enough to where the average writer can feel like they're writing a better story than most. I do find the isekai endearing, but at the same time, I'm like, I feel like as a writer, I could tweak some of these things and maybe even improve the story. Like, all this discrediting of the genre has actually made it so that there's not much pressure when you're writing within the genre. You are expected to indulge, expected to follow tropes, and so the choice of whether you want to or not isn't dictated by what the critics will say. It's dictated by what you want to do. And I know what people are going to say, right? Like, that the fact that isekai are the majority of anime adaptations is a bad thing because it kills original anime ideas, it stops other adaptations of higher quality work, and takes up space in an already overcrowded industry. All very real issues that I'm not diminishing at all. But I mean, come on, we're not babies, okay? We know all mediums have the thing that will always and forever get the most funding because it makes the most money. TV has reality TV. Streaming has bloated documentaries. Movies have superhero adaptations. Books have self-improvement. And anime, at this point in time, happens to have isekai. And if you ask me, it's the best of the bunch. Because it's something that can be made by one person with a cool idea and escalate to that person making a living as a writer and getting an anime adaptation. In a world where algorithmic success has become so binding and formulaic, so precise and cold and filled with keywords and thumbnails and editing tricks, I think an isekai with a goofy premise, a long title, and a big booby anime woman here and there made by a person that felt like writing about that is honestly a pretty cool thing. Moreover, if you adopt that creepypasta comparison into your isekai consumption, things kind of start making sense. These are amateur writers with cool ideas gunning for the top, in the hopes that their golden goose can turn into a writing career. The only difference is, we get to see those amateur creepypasta posts because they're in English. The average anime fan will only find out about certain isekai once they get actual anime adaptations. Adaptations that are usually part of an anime assembly line designed to only relay the basic idea of the story in order to boost volume sales for a year or so. In that sense, maybe trying to convince people isekai holds value is inconsequential, when that value is just so far removed from the usual mode of consumption. Truthfully, I don't care if people generalize and call all isekai trash. But I do think we need to give that whole ecosystem a lot more credit. Series like Tanya, Overlord, and Slime have already permeated through regular anime culture, and series like Ascendance of a Bookworm and The Faraway Paladin are legitimate, very solid literary works that deserve their flowers. Isekai is constantly side-eyed. But instead of giving it a bad rep and telling the little ones to stay away from that one, I think we should encourage more interactions with the structure that holds this ecosystem together. Either make or find the right isekai for you. Nothing is going to stop you, just like nothing is stopping those aspiring authors from throwing those unpolished but ambitious works out into the void. Thanks for watching.